So I planned on making this yet another segment in my infamous Worst of Nu Metal series, where I previously covered nu metal acts like Primer 55, Methods of Mayhem, and Apartment 69. But I was, of course, both parts surprised and equal amounts taprooty when I found out that the fan base for those bands found these videos before any, like-minded individuals like myself did, which kind of just pissed people off. And yeah, while I was harsh on those groups, I was also being honest. And I really wasn't even that mean or anything. You nu metal guys are so sensitive sometimes. So either way, I was gonna go ahead with it when, well, I found that Orange 9mm really wasn't around long enough to warrant any worst of label, and they really did end up putting out at least one really cool album, one I consider among the best of any nu metal's outings. Orange 9mm even had an interesting story, so when it came down to it, really, I kind of just decided that, well, we need to talk about Orange 9mm. I remember finding this particular CD from the band Burn on the street while I was walking home in 7th grade, and while I understand its importance now, I didn't then, and it really wasn't my thing once I popped it into my CD player, However, that same year would ironically be my first concert, the 1999 Machine Head and Sevendust tour, featuring openers Orange 9mm and a pre-fame Chevelle, where again, I found Orange 9mm to just be underwhelming live. And I mean, I was all about this nu metal shit at the time, let me tell you. I was playing Machine Head's The Burning Red on repeat, and I was anxious to see the band, with Sevendust and their release Home, which I was also just playing on repeat. Hell, I even liked the Heavy Tool knockoff era of Chevelle that I saw that night, but not Orange 9mm. Why? I remember the band popping up on compilations around that time and seeing their videos on TV and whatnot. I specifically remember the compilation called The Hard and the Heavy. Any of you guys remember that?
It's the most metal ever jammed into a 2-CD set that delivers rare remixes and live tracks. 30 of the hardest hits from Kid Rock, Power Man 5000, Limp Bizkit, Sevendust, and Monster Magnet. Stained, Soulfly, Slipknot, Rob Zombie, Cold Chamber, Static X, and Fear Factory. It's the most metal ever hammered onto a 2-CD set.
This one featured remixes from bands like Rob Zombie, Grip Incorporated, Limp Bizkit, Kid Rock, Videodrome, Nothing Face, Booyah, all the nu metal gods. The track from Orange 9mm on that particular compilation was the song When You Lie, and I remember hearing this tune and thinking, is this the same band I saw live? Because when I saw them, it was the basic take on the nu metal stuff from all of their earlier albums, and not really the sound that was featured on the album Pretend I'm Human. So that was basically my exposure to the band in a nutshell, and I kind of just forgot about them. I remember I had an Orange 9mm sticker I got at the show that was on my binder for years, but I don't know, I just largely forgot about the group, and I had no idea for years until researching this video that they had ties to the New York hardcore scene. Lead singer Chaka Malik, I hope I said that right, started the band Burn and really made their mark with their debut in the blooming New York hardcore scene. And their contributions really can't be ignored, really spearheading a lot of the sounds found on their debut and leaving a unique mark on this scene overall. And that was just with Burn's first album. Burn would really gain massive success and a strong hardcore fan base, as in those days, fan bases were hardcore. And the following they were able to get even before the first release is something to behold. So when lead singer Chaka Malik quit around 1992 and started a new band, well, a lot of people were eagerly awaiting, as well were a wide variety of record labels. Chaka would recruit guitarist and later bassist Chris Traynor, who would go on to play in bands like Helmet and tour and record with Katy Perry down the line, but was an integral part of Orange 9mm, all things considered, and who started out just as a fan of the band Burn. And with the addition of Larry Gorman, who would later go on to play with Asobi Sextu and Glassjaw, as well as finding the perfect bassist Eric Wright on bass, who left shortly after to join H2O. Well, for better or worse, this was the first iteration of Orange 9mm. Chris Trainer said in an interview how they would immediately sell out shows and in no time had record labels looking to release their music, but even the record label guys couldn't get into their sold out shows. You know, some of these labels, I mean, were pretty big, and this found them being signed to a major label after only 3 shows, as the band had previously put out an EP on an independent label. And, you know, the band's first couple albums and EPs or whatever, they would really kind of play as like the epitome of nu metal, if you ask me. So after the self-titled EP on Revelation Records, the band signed to Elektra Records, quite the upgrade, and they wound up getting some pretty big performances. You know, they were on TV a lot, they played some big shows, they probably toured with Nonpoint or some shit, and they even went through some member changes. So once they signed to Elektra Records, they released the album Driver Not Included, which I think is kind of remembered as their best album by most fans, but I don't know, it's not really my thing. And the album more or less doubles down on the band's sound, you know, even re-recording some tunes from their previous outing. But the band's success was warranted as their fan base was still growing, and they saw themselves on tour with bands like Helmet, Korn, and Deftones. And yeah, probably Nonpoint or some shit. The album is an interesting listen though, as its hardcore roots, deep in the New York scene, were now being produced by Alice in Chains producer Dave Jordan in Los Angeles. And you can feel the group mix in some soundscapes and such throughout, but it really didn't change much, you know, or have anything else to say apart from their previous stuff, in my opinion. Although in the band's defense, you know, it's quite the feat to get the ball rolling this heavy after being in such a big band like Burn. Like, Orange 9mm really was never in their shadow. And Orange 9mm really, they just got a hold of this sound before it really broke through. And while I find the releases up to this point to be basic rap metal, if you will, what really hit home with me was the next album, Tragic. This time on Atlantic Records, as they kind of went all out with that sound, you know, and it was when listening to this one that I picked up on the supposed hardcore sensibilities. And I kind of realized that, yeah, they were on the previous releases too. I mean, it was 1996, and by this time there were more bands dabbling with this style. In fact, there were a shitload of them. You know, the nu metal thing was really kicking off, as the nihilistic era of nu metal was kind of just finding its jinko-laden legs, and Orange 9mm was largely spearheading the genre still. Especially with the album Tragic, that kind of plays out as a nihilistic take on the blooming nu metal genre, with tracks like Muted, Gun to Your Head, 7, and Failure. Real upbeat stuff. The band would tour in support of the album with such acts as The Misfits, Sick of It All, Ned's Atomic Dustbin, and Local H. Although the tours would go on without longtime guitarist Chris Trainer, who would quit just weeks before the album's release to join Helmet. Guitarist Chris Trainer would speak on his departure and say that he didn't really feel he was doing a good job in the band, that he just really wasn't into that sound anymore. And he said he thought it was showing. And, you know, with the label adding pressure to do more nu metal tropey stuff, like, I don't know, adding tribal drums and whatnot, I don't know, he wasn't really feeling that whole thing. And, you know, since he had already kind of established a friendship with the band Helmet, he saw a way out and simply joined their band where he could just play guitar, you know, not so many responsibilities. Chris Trainer also stated that seeing other bands really expanding the sound made him realize he wasn't in it, you know, not anymore. Bands like Korn and Deftones being his examples. Trainer also stated his regrets and bad feelings leaving the band the way he did. And after touring for Tragic, the band would be dropped by Atlantic Records due to poor sales and whatnot. and they would take a more creative route the next few years, really only catering to their Japanese audience with some big shows that eventually led to the EP Ultraman vs. Godzilla on NG Records. And this being another indie label, well, Orange 9mm, they had a lot of room to play with, and they decided to go a much more experimental route than previously. They basically recorded an arsenal of different sounding tunes in a basement, slowly building what would eventually become 1999's Pretend I'm Human. But things wouldn't seem to be going well from the outside looking in, with the band now a three-piece at this point. They moved to Los Angeles permanently, straight just out of New York City. But it would all prove to be a good move, as in my opinion, they would release their best album to date. This time around, we would get a largely original sound compared to the band's older tunes, really not sounding like Orange 9mm at all. However, this is the Orange 9mm I remember, and I think that like this whole sound in this era, this version of Orange 9mm really plays well alongside other bands like Spineshank or dare I say Pitch Shifter, while retaining and pushing many elements that would have drawn your basic Limp Bizkit fan as well. Where the hardcore stylings here are completely gone, they're replaced with electronic grooves and up-tempo blaring bass lines that really negate the need for any guitars when you think about it. Though it would seem the bombastic nature of their live shows would be largely played down with this style when it came to the live stuff, and the members in turn added more members to kind of build up the stage show and try to get that feel, that high energy feel from the earlier albums, but it just wasn't working this time around, which explains whenever I saw the group why they were more upbeat and more still like their old school nu metal sound. I guess that's what was selling, that's what fans knew, and maybe as much as I love the album, maybe this experimental route wasn't the way to go. It's a shame too, because Pretend I'm Human has some badass tracks on it. It even still manages to perfectly mix rap and rock and even hardcore here and there all these years after Chaka's work with Burn. This video was not meant to be a full in-depth take on the group, or it wasn't meant to chronicle every little thing they did. That seems to be what a lot of people expect when I make these videos. Sorry. This time, I just wanted to let it be known that yes, I do enjoy some exploits from the nu metal genre, even when I thought I didn't. And while I don't care for the band's first couple releases, I think 1999's Pretend I'm Human is an underrated example of these kinds of groups and the albums that they were able to put out if they really tried. And had the band gone on further rather than disbanding shortly after, I really do think we would have got some crazy shit. With Pretend I'm Human, the band had their last run of mainstream success on tours with Sevendust and Machine Head, but I guess since the elements that made them so popular, the hardcore, spastic stuff, being gone by this point, well, sales were low, so yeah, they decided to just call it quits. Chaka never officially left Burn, he's still currently with the group, and he even hinted at an Orange 9mm reunion earlier this year, but nothing's happened of that as of this making of this video. So, with this one out the way, I think I'll start work on some more videos focused on other nu metal acts I think put out some good music. What do you guys think about that? Why not? Although, yeah, I think I may still be doing my Worst of Nu Metal series, as there's still some things we gotta get through. Today, it's fair to say that Orange 9mm is largely forgotten in mainstream circles, but it's also fair to say that their influence is still largely lingering today, as their initial sound, kind of came full circle. And with other bands like Hed PE carrying the torch all these years, and, even their Subnoise label mates, the current band Dropout Kings that are on tour right now, well, they're a perfect example. And all these years later, the familiarities from all of the Orange 9mm stuff really is all relevant still. It's very strange. Orange 9mm's mark on aggressive music cannot be denied. And in my opinion, the album Pretend I'm Human pushed the status quo in regards to what was selling at the time, as when other bands were there to simply have a good time. Orange 9mm took a risk and made a pretty damn cool experimental, darker toned album, an album that stands out amongst their short-lived discography and in the nu metal genre in general. Please like and subscribe, and definitely leave me a comment. That helps appease the algorithm gods. And let me know what other nu metal bands I should talk about next. I'll be seeing you soon, Staunch Gang.
Found myself, found myself, found myself. Found myself, found myself, found myself. Found myself, found myself, found myself.